Today I want to introduce you to my 2007 Kawasaki EX250 Ninja that I don't believe I've ever put on the channel before. Just because I've been riding the XT225 so much since I started the channel, and then I had the SR250 Yamaha project bike, but I've had this since 2012 and we've put around 17,000 miles on the road together. And today I want to give you a little background and just let you know what I think of the bike. So this is my 2007 Kawasaki Ninja 250, the EX250R, and I've had this bike since 2012. I bought it used. I was the third owner, and it was a young woman I bought it from that learned to ride on it, and I think the person before her was a new rider too. And it had 5,000 miles on it back in 2012 when I got it, and it now has 22,500. So I put, what, 17,500 on it. I hope that math's correct. And most of those miles came on in the early years of owning the bike, when it was my primary bike. For years, this was my main motorcycle. And I would generally then go out and buy some kind of $300 or $400 project bike and work on it and fix it up and just have fun. But this is what I depended on to get me places. And I also took a number of trips on it. This has been a great trip motorcycle, which might surprise you for being just a 250. But I've taken it from here in Cincinnati, Ohio, over to West Virginia, where I'm originally from, and ridden it all around the state. And I've gone west all the way out to Lincoln, Nebraska and Iowa, and I've been up to Milwaukee, Wisconsin on it, and yeah, come back through Chicago, and then just tons of miles around here on country roads. When I do those trips, it's a combination of back roads. A lot of times what I do on those trips is do the back roads going out, taking my time riding around, just having fun. And then when it's time to come home, maybe sometimes I'll have to hit the interstate and make some time. And this thing it'll do 100 on the interstate, or rather, I've done 100 on the interstate. I'm sure that was someplace, though, out west where there were no speed limits. Let's just be clear. But, and at that point, it's probably doing around 9,500 RPM. And it does a great job of it. And the bike, if I remember correctly, probably had a little bit more in it. And I mean a little bit more. But, yeah, it'll do that kind of speed, but on the interstates, man, at that speed, or, well, any speed on the interstate with a smaller bike like this, you have to watch for the wind, because the wind can really blow it around. Anybody that's ridden small bikes any distance knows that you have to kind of get used to that feeling of the motorcycle blowing around. Boy, the greenery is coming along nicely. Look at the lush valley. I wonder what's going on down there. I know there's a farm on the edge of it, but that looks very deliberate. Obviously. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, so I mentioned that I like this bike for trips, and I have done a few things specifically to make it better for riding longer distances. And one of the things is this windshield. It has this little extra windshield. I could not get, at the time that I bought the bike, they no longer had available any sort of aftermarket taller windscreens. Or if there were, they just looked kind of whack. But this deflector does heaps good work. I love that thing. It was a great investment. And then I also raised the handlebars up just a little bit There are 1-inch risers under the 2-piece handlebars, and that's not only the most rise that you can get to them, the reason being that the cables are just long enough to accept that 1-inch rise, but it really does make it way more comfortable seating position for distances. You aren't really crouched over like you are on much more aggressive sport bikes. This thing has more in common, I think, with something like a Kawasaki Concourse Sport Tourer, the big sport touring bike, than it does with the really aggressive Ninjas. And so the deflector, the handlebars up, foam grips to take a little buzziness out of the handlebars at the high revs. As I think you can see, it revs up to 13 grand red line, so you can really get it buzzing. It's happy when it's buzzing. And then I had a little I'm at a loss for words, cruise control thing there that just went on the handlebars, a little mechanical thing, but I had that off right now. And I also on longer trips would use a seat pad, some kind of generic Amazon ATV seat pad, and that really helped. The seat is not super comfortable on its own. For a day like today where I'm probably just riding around for 60-70 miles, it's just fine. But if you're doing a longer day, the seat gets tiresome for sure. And the only other modification I made to the bike was stiffer fork springs, because the stock springs, man, they must have been for like a 110-pound rider or something. And at 160, the very first time I rode the bike and grabbed the front brake, it just bottomed the forks out. They just dove horribly, and it was really vague in the turns. So it was, to be honest, it was downright dangerous. If you know anybody getting one of these first generation Kawasaki 250s, tell them look into those fork springs if they weigh anything at all. But that made such a huge difference, and now I've set the preload on the rear shock, which is all you can do back there, and it's just perfectly comfortable. The cockpit feels pretty good. When I first hop on it after riding other bikes, my legs feel a little bit cramped, but it feels perfectly fine now. And the rest of the riding position is relaxed enough. No wind buffeting on my head or anything. That's all good. And I had mentioned this was, I think I mentioned this is one of the first generation of the EX250. This is a 2007 model. It originally came with these super hokey flames on the side of it. I just couldn't deal with that, so I was able to take a heat gun and heat them up and peel those off. It was really tedious, but it worked, and got that done, and now I really like the looks of the bike so much more, and that's why I mentioned it looked kind of like that Kawasaki Concourse. But this first generation, they made this bike for a whole lot of years in this basic configuration. Up to, I think, 2007. I think this was the last year for this particular configuration. And then they went to the much sportier looking Ninja 250. Much more aggressive looking bike, which at the time in 2012 I could have looked for one of those, but I went with this one because I liked the more relaxed riding position. I liked the fact that it was going to be a little bit more comfortable on the longer rides. And then after a number of years of them making that 2008 to whatever Ninja 250, they bumped the displacement up to a Ninja 300, and now I know they're making the Ninja 400, and I'm assuming that was they punched out the 300. I don't think they still make a 400 and a 300. But the bike, you know, long history, so it's just like with my XT225. There's a whole online group that knows these bikes inside and out, and I'll look up their website and post it here. where you find all of these FAQs and all of these answers about the earlier Ninja 250s. The place that this bike was really made for is the back roads. These small bikes that let you rev up that high, just make you feel like Superman when you're riding. Even if you aren't going super fast, you can make it feel like you are. And you can really start to push your skills, and you can begin to learn without putting yourself in a whole lot of jeopardy. It's not like a super aggressive sport bike where if you whiskey throttle it or do something suddenly where you can get yourself in a whole lot of trouble. This thing is not going to squirt out from under you and take off. You know, I mean, we're picking up speed quick, but you know, it's not gonna burn the tire and take off from you. Right now, speaking of tires, I have Pirelli MT16s on the bike, which are awesome, and they are kind of a sport performance yet good wearing tire, and a lot of people recommend them. And they have a lower profile, so the bike sits even just, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch lower even, and lets me, with my short 28-inch inseam, touch the ground flat-footed. There aren't a whole lot of bikes that I can touch the ground flat-footed on. Not that that's important, but hey, when it's such a rarity, you really take notice when it's possible. Before that, I always had things like Shinko tires on it, and I've got no complaints about Shinko. I think they're just a wonderful value. Well, last fall I went to sell the bike, actually. So I've got the XT225 and the SR250, and now I need to just clear space in the garage. And I wasn't riding this bike as much. Since I started the YouTube channel, the XT225 and the SR250 have been the bikes I've really enjoyed the most. But I liked having this around if I wanted to go on any long trips. Right now, with the way the world is, I don't know when that next long trip is ever going to be. But tried to sell the bike, but the people looking at it were all people that couldn't even ride. They were just kids with no experience and a dream, and it was late in the year. It was November, and they thought they were going to buy this, and it was going to be their single mode of transportation and bring them a whole new possibility of life in the winter. And they were just kind of unrealistic, and it made me uncomfortable when any of them wanted to even try and ride it, because they didn't even have learner's permits. And I eventually just decided I'm going to wait until spring, make sure somebody safe and knowledgeable can get the bike. And so I have a friend interested in it right now, actually. I'm not in a hurry to move it, and actually riding it today, this thing runs so good, and it revs so nicely. It's just such a clean running bike. I do hate to see it go, but there's only so much time and only so many motorcycles I can ride, and it's time to thin the herd a little bit. Oh well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope maybe you've learned a thing or two about these Ninjas. I'll put the links below to some good resources on them if you want to look up something more, but I give it a big thumbs up if you're looking for something that's small, light, easy to touch the ground on. It's going to be great for a beginner to learn on. It's docile enough, yet it's going to allow you to just rev it and have fun if you're more experienced, and it's going to do it all with a more relaxed riding position. Now, if you want a sport bike, a genuine sport bike, go with something more aggressive, I would say. But this is a real fun compromise for a beginner. And you'll find them all day long for under 1,500 bucks on Craigslist, with way lower mileage than this one, I'm gonna say, on some of them. Some of them have been ridden to death, but there are still some that people, you know, they get past. Not every beginner becomes a lifelong motorcyclist, and like when I got this, there were a couple of different people that put a couple thousand miles on it, and then graduated college or went off to college or whatever, and found other interests. Alrighty, thank you so much for watching. I always really appreciate it. If you made it this far, that's cool. And be sure to give this video a like if you liked it. And I always appreciate subscribers, because last time I mentioned this, I'm heading toward that 1,000 subscriber mark, and that's my goal for this year. It's early in the year. I'd love to hit 1,000 subscribers, so anything you could do there would be awesome. And until next time, I hope you're able to get out and ride too. And when you do, please, please ride safe. This thing is covered in loose gravel. Shoot. That would be a bitchin' turn if it wasn't covered in loose gravel.